The church bells rang out, sharp and clear, slicing through the humid Virginia air like a warning. I stood at the edge of street, Mary's courtyard, my heart pounding so loud I swore it could drown out the organ music spilling from the open doors. My brother, Ethan, was inside, minutes away from Mary and Claire. The woman everyone in our small town of Willow Creek called his perfect match, but I couldn't shake the look he'd given me last night. The one that changed everything. It wasn't just a glance. It was a confession. A silent scream that had been building for years. Ethan, my older brother by 3 years. The golden boy who carried our family's expectations on his broad shoulders, had looked at me across the dinner table and whispered, "You're the only one who gets me, Caleb. You always have." I'd laughed it off then, chalking it up to pre-wedding jitters. But now, standing here in the shadow of the church, I felt the weight of those words like a stone in my chest. Ethan and I had grown up inseparable, two boys against the world in a town that didn't take kindly to anything different. Willow Creek was all picket fences and Sunday sermons, where men like us were expected to marry, settle down, and keep quiet about anything that didn't fit the mold. I'd always known I was gay, but I buried it deep. For Mom, for Dad, for the life we were supposed to live. Ethan, though, he was the star quarterback, prom king, the one who could do no wrong. Until last night, I thought he'd play that role forever. "Caleb," a voice called, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Mom, waving from the church steps, her smile tight with that familiar mix of pride and worry. "You're late. Ethan's asking for you." I nodded, adjusting the tie that felt like a noose around my neck, and made my way toward the church. The gravel crunched under my shoes, each step heavier than the last. Ethan had asked me to be his best man, a choice that raised eyebrows among our cousins, but felt right to us. We'd always been each other's anchor, even when the world tried to pull us apart. But now, as I pushed open the heavy oak doors, I wasn't sure what I was walking into. The sanctuary was packed, rows of pews filled with faces I'd known my whole life, neighbors, teachers, Pastor Jim with his stern gaze. Claire's family sat up front, her mother dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. The air smelled of lilies and wax, and the organ played a soft hymn that made my skin crawl. I scanned the room for Ethan, my pulse racing, and found him near the altar, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked perfect, tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair neatly combed, his suit hugging him like it was made for this moment. But when his eyes met mine, something flickered in them. Not joy, not nerves, something raw, something dangerous. "Caleb," he said, his voice low as I approached. The groomsmen were milling about, laughing, oblivious to the storm brewing between us. "I need to talk to you. Alone. Now," I hissed, glancing at the clock. The ceremony was set to start in 10 minutes. "Now," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward a side room where the choir usually practiced. My heart thudded as the door clicked shut behind us, the noise of the church muffled to a hum. "Ethan, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're about to get married." He paced the small room, his hands raking through his hair, ruining the careful styling. "I can't do this," he said, stopping to face me. His eyes were wild, like a trapped animal's. "I thought I could. Caleb. I thought I could be what they want, what Mom and Dad want, what Claire wants. But last night, when I looked at you," he trailed off, his voice breaking. My breath caught. Ethan, don't. No, you don't get it, he said, stepping closer. His hands hovered near my shoulders, like he wanted to grab me but didn't dare. I've been lying to myself my whole life. I've been lying to everyone. But you're the one person I can't lie to. You're the one person who makes me feel real. The air between us felt charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. I wanted to tell him to stop, to go back to Claire, to the life he was supposed to have. But the truth was, I'd felt it too, the pull between us, the unspoken thing we'd both buried for years. Growing up, we'd shared everything, secrets, dreams, the weight of a town that demanded perfection. I'd always thought my feelings for him were one-sided, a shameful ache I'd carry alone. But now, standing here, I saw the same ache mirrored in his eyes. Ethan, I whispered, my voice barely audible. You can't say this. Not now. Why not? He demanded, his voice rising. Because it's wrong. Because it's not what they expect. I'm tired of pretending. Caleb. I'm tired of hiding who I am while we are. The words hit me like a punch. Who we are. He was saying it. Out loud. The thing we'd danced around since we were teenagers, sneaking beers by the creek. Laughing too long at each other's jokes. Lingering too close in the dark. But this wasn't a late-night confession we could laugh off. This was Ethan. My brother. Standing in a church minutes from marrying a woman he didn't love. Telling me I was his one true love. Ethan, you're not thinking straight, I said, my voice shaking. You're nervous. You're scared. But Claire's good for you. She loves you. She doesn't know me, he said, his voice raw. Not like you do. Caleb, I've spent my whole life trying to be the son, the brother, the man everyone expects. But when I'm with you, I don't have to pretend. I don't have to be anything but me. I took a step back, my back hitting the wall. The room felt too small, the air too thick. This isn't fair, I said. You can't drop this on me now. Not here. Not like this. I know, he said, his eyes glistening. I know it's not fair, but I can't go through with this wedding. I can't marry her when I'm in love with you. The world tilted. My brother, the man I'd idolized, the man I'd loved in silence for years, was standing here, tearing down every wall we'd built to keep this secret buried. And as the organ swelled outside, signaling the start of the ceremony, I realized we were out of time. The organ's notes pulsed through the walls, a countdown to a moment I wasn't ready for. Ethan's words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable, like a storm cloud ready to burst. I stared at him. My brother, my best friend, my impossible love, and felt my world unraveling. Ethan, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You can't just say that and expect everything to change. You're about to walk down the aisle. I don't care, he said, his jaw tight. He stepped closer, his breath warm against my face. I've spent 28 years caring what everyone else thinks. I'm done. Caleb, I'm done living a lie. I wanted to scream at him, to shake him until he came to his senses. But my body betrayed me. My hands trembled, itching to reach out, to pull him close and tell him I'd felt the same way for years. But this wasn't a fantasy. This was Willow Creek, Virginia, where people whispered about those kinds and crosses hung on every wall. Ethan, listen to me, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. You're not just walking away from Claire. You're walking away from Mom. Dad. This town, everything. You think they'll just let you go? You think they'll accept us? His face softened, but his eyes burned with determination. I don't need their acceptance. I need you. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I'd spent my whole life hiding who I was, convincing myself that loving Ethan was a sin I could bury. I'd watched him date girls, cheer at his football games, smile at his engagement party, all while swallowing the truth that I was in love with my own brother. Not just in the way brothers love each other, but in a way that made my heart race and my dreams ache. Ethan, this isn't just about us, I said, my voice cracking. What about Claire? She's waiting out there, thinking she's about to start a life with you. He flinched, guilt flashing across his face. I know, he said. I know what I'm doing to her. But I can't marry her. Caleb, I can't stand there and vow to love someone when my heart's been yours since we were kids. The door creaked open, and we both froze. It was Jake, one of the groomsmen, his face flushed from too much pre-ceremony whiskey. Ethan, man, what's the holdup? Pastor Jim's getting antsy, and Claire's mom looks like she's gonna cry. Ethan straightened, his mask slipping back into place. I'll be out in a minute, he said, his voice calm but firm. Jake raised an eyebrow, glancing between us, but he shrugged and left, the door clicking shut. We don't have time for this, I said, my heart racing. You need to make a choice. Ethan. Right now. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine, and for a moment, I thought he'd back down, that he'd choose the safe path, the one where he married Claire, and we pretended this conversation never happened. But then he reached out, his hand brushing mine, and the touch sent a jolt through me. I choose you, he said, his voice steady. I choose us. Before I could respond, the door flew open again, and this time it was Mom. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with panic. Ethan, what are you doing? The ceremony's starting. Ethan didn't move, didn't take his eyes off me. Mom, I need to tell you something, he said, his voice low but resolute. My stomach dropped. I grabbed his arm, my grip tight. Ethan, don't, I whispered. Not now. But he shook his head, his expression unyielding. I'm done hiding. Caleb. I'm telling her. Mom's eyes darted between us, confusion giving way to suspicion. Tell me what? She asked, her voice sharp. What's going on? Ethan took a deep breath, his hand still brushing mine, and I knew there was no going back. Mom, he said, I can't marry Claire. I'm in love with someone else. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's face froze, her lips parting slightly as if she couldn't process the words. Then her eyes landed on our joined hands, and I saw the realization hit her like a wave. Ethan, she whispered, her voice trembling. What are you saying? He didn't flinch. I'm saying I'm in love with Caleb, he said. I always have been. The room spun. Mom staggered back, her hand clutching the doorframe for support. No, she said, her voice barely audible. No, that's not possible. Mom, please, I said, stepping forward. But she held up a hand, stopping me. Don't, she said, her eyes filling with tears. Don't say anything. She turned and fled, the door slamming behind her. Ethan's hand tightened around mine, but I pulled away, my chest heaving. "What did you just do?" I asked, my voice raw. You just blew up our lives." "I told the truth," he said, his voice steady but his eyes pleading. "Caleb, I can't keep pretending. Not anymore." Outside, the organ stopped, and a murmur rippled through the church. I could hear voices: Claire's father, Pastor Jim, the groomsmen all growing louder, more urgent. The ceremony was falling apart, and we were at the center of the storm. "We need to get out of here," I said, my mind racing. "Now." Ethan nodded, grabbing his jacket from a chair. "Where?" he asked. I didn't know. All I knew was that we couldn't stay here. Not with Mom's reaction. Not with the whole town about to descend on us. "Anywhere but here," I said, pulling open the side door that led to the parking lot. We slipped out into the sunlight, the summer heat hitting us like a wall. Ethan's car was parked near the edge of the lot, and we ran for it, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. As we climbed inside, I glanced back at the church, half expecting to see Mom or Claire chasing after us. But the doors stayed closed, the bells silent. "Where are we going?" Ethan asked, his hands gripping the steering wheel. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice shaking. "But we can't stay in Willow Creek. Not after this." He nodded, his jaw tight, and started the engine. As we pulled out of the lot, I looked at Hemi brother, my love, the man who'd just turned his back on everything for me and wondered what we'd just set in motion. The road stretched out before us, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through fields of corn and soybean, the kind of endless green that made Virginia feel like it could swallow you whole. Ethan drove in silence, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, while I stared out the window, trying to process the fact that we'd just run from his wedding. My phone buzzed in my pocket, texts from Mom, Dad, even Claire's sister, but I ignored them, too afraid to face the fallout. "Where are we going, Caleb?" Ethan finally asked, his voice low, almost lost in the hum of the engine. I glanced at him, his profile sharp against the setting sun. "I don't know," I said. "Richmond, maybe. Somewhere we can lay low for a bit." He nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on the road. "I'm sorry," he said after a moment. "I didn't mean to drag you into this." "You didn't drag me," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "You said what you said. Ethan, you chose this." He flinched, and I immediately regretted my tone. "I know," he said, but I couldn't keep lying. Not to Claire, not to Mom, not to myself, and especially not to you. I leaned back in the seat, my head spinning. The truth was, I dreamed of this moment, not the chaos, not the running, but Ethan choosing me. But now that it was real, it felt like a weight I wasn't sure I could carry. "What happens now?" I asked. "We can't just be together. Not like this. Not in Willow Creek." "Then we leave Willow Creek," he said, his voice firm. "We start over somewhere else. Somewhere no one knows us." The idea was tempting, too tempting. A fresh start. Just the two of us, where we could be who we were without judgment. But the reality of it hit me like a cold wave. "And what about Mom and Dad?" I asked. "What about Claire? You think they're just going to let this go?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "They'll have to," he said. "I'm not going back." We drove for hours, the sun sinking below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. My phone kept buzzing. And finally, I turned it off, unable to face the messages piling up. Ethan's phone was silent. He'd left it at the church, probably on purpose. We stopped at a gas station just outside Richmond, the neon lights casting a harsh glow over the pumps. Ethan filled the tank while I went inside to grab water and snacks, my head still spinning. The cashier, an older woman with tired eyes, barely glanced at me as she rang up my items. I wondered what she'd think if she knew what we were running from. Back in the car, Ethan handed me a map he'd found in the glove compartment. No GPS, he said with a small smile. Feels more like an adventure this way. I laughed despite myself. The sound brittle. An adventure, I repeated. That's one way to put it. We decided to head toward D.C., a city big enough to disappear in, at least for a while. But as we drove, the weight of what we'd done settled over me. Ethan had just walked away from his fiancée, his family, his entire life. And I was the reason. Ethan, I said, my voice soft. Are you sure about this? About us? He glanced at me, his eyes softening. I've never been more sure of anything, he said. Caleb, I've loved you since we were kids. Not just as a brother, but as more. I tried to bury it. Tried to be what everyone wanted. But I can't. Not anymore. My throat tightened, and I looked away, blinking back tears. I've loved you too, I admitted, the words spilling out before I could stop them. But it's not going to be easy. I know, he said, reaching for my hand. His touch was warm, steady, and for a moment, it felt like we could face anything. But we'll figure it out. Together. We found a cheap motel just outside D.C., the kind with flickering signs and threadbare carpets. The clerk didn't ask questions, just handed us a key and pointed us to a room on the second floor. Inside, the air smelled of stale smoke and bleach. But it was ours for the night, a small piece of the world where we could be alone. Ethan dropped his bag on the floor and sank onto the bed, his shoulders slumping. I didn't think it would feel like this, he said, his voice quiet. Like I'm betraying everyone. You're not, I said, sitting beside him. You're being honest. That's not betrayal. He looked at me, his eyes searching. But what about you? Are you okay with this? With us? I hesitated, the weight of his question pressing down on me. Was I okay with this? With loving my brother in a way the world would never understand? With leaving behind everything I'd known? I don't know, I admitted. But I know I don't want to lose you. He reached out, his hand cupping my cheek. And for a moment, we just sat there, the world outside fading away. Then he leaned in, his lips brushing mine, tentative at first, then deeper, more certain. It was a kiss that held years of longing, years of secrets, and it felt like coming home. But as we pulled apart, the reality of our situation crashed back in. My phone, now powered on, lit up with a new message from Mom. Come home. Caleb. We need to talk. The motel room felt smaller with Mom's message glowing on my phone screen. A silent accusation cutting through the haze of our stolen moment. Ethan's kiss still lingered on my lips, a warmth I wanted to hold on to. But the words "come home" pulled me back to Willow Creek, to the life we'd just run from. I set the phone face down on the nightstand, but the weight of it stayed with me. Ethan noticed, his brow furrowing. Who was that? he asked, his voice soft but edged with worry. Mom, I said, avoiding his gaze. She wants us to come back. He let out a bitter laugh, leaning back against the headboard. Of course she does. She thinks she can fix this, doesn't she? Like it's some kind of phase. I didn't answer. Mom had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over Dad's temper and the town's gossip. But this wasn't something she could fix with a casserole and a church prayer. This was us, Ethan, and me breaking every rule we'd been raised to follow. We can't go back, Ethan said, his voice firm. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I nodded, but doubt gnawed at me. Running felt right in the heat of the moment. But what were we really doing? Hiding in a motel, pretending the world wouldn't catch up. I looked at Ethan, his face half lit by the dim lamp, and saw the same fear mirrored in his eyes, even if he wouldn't admit it. Let's get some sleep, I said, trying to push the thoughts away. We'll figure it out tomorrow. He agreed, but neither of us slept much. The bed creaked under our weight, and the silence between us was filled with unspoken questions. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of Willow Creekhoff, Mom crying, Dad shouting, Claire standing alone at the altar. Morning came too soon, the sunlight streaming through the thin curtains. Ethan was already up, sitting at the small table with a cup of instant coffee from the motel's machine. I was thinking, he said as I rubbed sleep from my eyes. We could head to New York. It's far enough from home, big enough to start over. New York, I repeated, the idea both thrilling and terrifying. What would we do there? Anything, he said, a spark of hope in his voice. Get jobs. Find an apartment. Live like we're free. Free. The word felt foreign, like a language I'd never learned. But the way Ethan said it, with that quiet certainty, made me want to believe it was possible. We checked out of the motel and hit the road again, the car humming along I-95 as the landscape shifted from rural fields to urban sprawl. Ethan turned on the radio, some old rock station, and for a while, we let the music fill the silence. But my phone kept buzzing more messages from Mom, a missed call from Dad, even one from Claire. I didn't read them, but their presence felt like a tether pulling us back. By late afternoon, we reached Baltimore, a halfway point to New York. We stopped at a diner, the kind with sticky booths and waitresses who called you hon. Ethan ordered pancakes, his favorite, and I got a burger. But neither of us ate much. The weight of our decision was settling in, heavy as the grease in the air. Caleb, Ethan said, pushing his plate aside, I need to know you're in this. Really in this. Because if you're not, if you want to go back, I'm in, I said, cutting him off. The words came out fast, almost desperate. I'm scared, Ethan, but I'm in. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. The waitress glanced our way, her expression unreadable, but I didn't pull away. For the first time, I didn't care who saw. That night, we found another motel, this one cleaner, with a view of the Baltimore skyline. Ethan stood by the window, staring at the lights, and I joined him, our shoulders brushing. This could be our life, he said softly. Just you and me. No hiding. I wanted to believe him, but the messages on my phone kept flashing in my mind. I turned it on, unable to resist, and saw a new text from Claire. I deserve to know why. My stomach twisted. Claire had been kind to me, always welcoming me into their shared world. unaware of the truth Ethan had hidden. She didn't deserve this. But neither did we deserve to live a lie. Ethan, I said, holding up the phone. We need to talk to Claire. She deserves that much. He nodded, his face tight. You're right. But not over the phone. We'll write her a letter. Explain everything. When we get to New York. I agreed. But the guilt lingered. We spent the night planning our next steps, finding a place to stay, looking for jobs, building a life that felt impossible just days ago. But as we talked, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that we were running from more than just Willow Creek. The next morning, as we packed up to leave, my phone rang. It was Dad. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. But Ethan nodded, his expression grim. Answer it, he said. We can't keep avoiding them. I pressed the button, my heart in my throat. Dad. Caleb. His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. Where are you? Where's Ethan? We're away, I said, glancing at Ethan. We needed some time. Time? He snapped. You left a church full of people waiting. Caleb. You left Claire humiliated. What the hell is going on? I swallowed, my mouth dry. Dad. It's complicated. Complicated. He repeated, his voice rising. Your mother's a mess. Caleb. She said Ethan's in love with you. Is that true? The question hung there, sharp and unyielding. Ethan watched me, his eyes steady, and I knew this was the moment, the point of no return. Yes, I said, my voice barely audible. It's true. The line went silent, and then I heard a choked sound, like Dad was trying not to cry. Come home, he said finally. We'll figure this out. I don't think we can, I said, my voice breaking. Not yet. I hung up before he could respond, my hand shaking. Ethan pulled me into a hug, his arms strong around me. And for a moment, I let myself believe we could outrun the pain we'd left behind. The drive to New York felt like crossing a border into a new world, one where the rules of Willow Creek didn't apply. The city's skyline loomed ahead, a jagged promise of anonymity. But my heart still carried the weight of Dad's voice, raw and broken over the phone. Ethan reached for my hand as we crossed the George Washington Bridge, his touch grounding me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running towards something as uncertain as what we'd left behind. We found a cheap apartment in Brooklyn, a walk-up with peeling paint and a radiator that clanked like it was haunted. It wasn't much, but it was our space where we could be Ethan and Caleb, not the golden boy and his shadow. We spent the first few days settling in, buying secondhand furniture, scouring job listings. Ethan found work at a construction site, his hands already calloused from years of helping Dad with odd jobs. I landed a gig at a coffee shop, the kind where artists and hipsters argued about philosophy over overpriced lattes. At night, we'd sit on the fire escape, sharing a beer and watching the city pulse below. This is it, Ethan said one evening, his voice soft. This is what freedom feels like. I wanted to agree, but the guilt still gnawed at me. Claire's text haunted me, and I hadn't answered it. I hadn't answered Mom or Dad either, though their messages kept coming, each one a little more desperate. Please, Caleb, just talk to us. Ethan, we're worried about you. I wanted to believe we could build a life here, but the past clung to us like damp air. One night, as we lay in bed, the city's hum filtering through the window, Ethan turned to me. We need to write that letter to Claire. He said. You were right. She deserves to know. I nodded, my throat tight. We sat at the kitchen table, a single bulb casting shadows on the walls, and started to write. Ethan's hand shook as he put pen to paper, his words careful but honest. Dear Claire, I'm so sorry for what I did, for leaving you at the altar, for breaking your heart. You didn't deserve that. The truth is, I've been hiding who I am for a long time, trying to be the man everyone expected. But I'm in love with Caleb, and I couldn't marry you knowing that. It's not about you, it's about me finally being honest. I hope you can forgive me someday. He signed it, then slid the paper to me. I added my own note, my handwriting messy with emotion. Claire, I never meant for this to happen. I tried to stay out of the way, to let Ethan live the life he was supposed to. But I love him too, and I couldn't let him go through with a lie. I'm sorry for the pain we caused. We mailed the letter the next day, but it didn't feel like closure. It felt like a confession we weren't ready to face the consequences of. Days turned into weeks, and we settled into a rhythm. Work, home, quiet moments where we could be ourselves. But the city wasn't the escape we'd hoped for. At the coffee shop, I overheard customers whispering about those kinds when a gay couple held hands at a table. At Ethan's job, a coworker made a crude joke about fairies, and Ethan came home quiet, his jaw tight. One night, he came back with a bruise on his cheek, his eyes dark. What happened? I asked, my heart racing as I touched his face. Some guy at work, he said, his voice low. Heard me talking about you. Didn't like it. I froze, anger and fear twisting inside me. Did you fight him? No, he said, looking away. I walked away. But it's not the first time. Caleb, it won't be the last. The reality of our new life hit hard. We'd left Willow Creek, but the world wasn't as free as we'd imagined. Still, we had each other, and that was enough to keep going. Then, one evening, as I was closing up the coffee shop, my phone rang. It was Mom. I almost didn't answer, but something in me couldn't ignore her anymore. Caleb, she said, her voice trembling. I need to see you. Both of you. Mom, I don't know if that's a good idea, I said, my voice tight. Please, she said. I'm in New York. I'm at a hotel in Manhattan. Just talk to me. I froze, the phone heavy in my hand. Ethan was at home, waiting for me, and I didn't know how to tell him that Mom had found us. What do you mean? You're here? I asked. How did you know where we were? I didn't, she said. But I knew you'd go somewhere big, somewhere you could hide. I've been calling every coffee shop in Brooklyn, asking for you. My heart sank. She tracked us down, not out of anger, but out of desperation. Okay, I said finally. We'll come. But just you, Mom. No one else. I hung up and headed home, my mind racing. When I told Ethan, his face hardened. She's not going to change her mind, he said. She'll try to drag us back? Maybe, I said. But she's our mom. We owe her a conversation. He didn't argue, but I could see the fear in his eyes. We'd fought so hard for this life, fragile as it was. What would happen if we let the past back in? The hotel lobby in Manhattan was all glass and chrome, a far cry from the dusty motels we'd hidden in. Mom sat in a corner, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Ethan and I approached, our steps slow, like we were walking into a trap. Her eyes lit up when she saw us. But there was pain there too, etched deep in the lines of her face. "Caleb." "Ethan," she said, standing to hug us. I let her, but Ethan stayed stiff, his arms at his sides. "Mom," I said, pulling back. "Why are you here?" She gestured to a small table, and we sat, the hum of the lobby fading into the background. "I needed to see you," she said, her voice trembling. "Both of you. After what happened at the church, I didn't know what to think." Ethan's jaw tightened. "There's nothing to think about," he said. "I told you the truth. I'm not going back." Mom's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "I know what you said, Ethan, and I've been trying to understand. But this is hard. You're my sons. I love you both. But it's not a choice. Mom." I cut in, my voice sharper than I meant. "It's who we are." She flinched, her hands twisting in her lap. "I know you think that," she said. "But you're brothers. The Bible, the church, the town, they'll never accept this. And I'm scared for you. For what this means." Ethan leaned forward, his voice low but fierce. "I don't care about the town, or the church, or what anyone thinks. I care about Caleb. I care about being happy for once in my life." Mom's tears spilled over, and she reached for his hand, but he pulled back. "Ethan, please," she said. "I'm not saying you can't be happy, but there has to be another way. You could come home, talk to Pastor Jim. Maybe." "No," Ethan said, his voice like steel. "I'm done with that. I'm done pretending." The conversation stretched on, each word a knife. Mom talked about Dad, how he hadn't slept since we left, how Claire had left town to stay with her sister. She begged us to come back, to fix things. But Ethan was unyielding, and I couldn't find the words to bridge the gap. Finally, Mom stood, her shoulders slumped. "I love you both," she said, "but I don't know how to do this. I need time." She left us in the lobby, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Ethan stared after her, his face unreadable. "She'll never understand," he said finally. "She might," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "She came all this way. That's something." But as we left the hotel, the city's noise swallowing us, I felt the weight of her words. The world wasn't going to make this easy, not Mom. Not Willow Creek. Not even New York. Back in Brooklyn, we tried to settle back into our routine. But something had shifted. Ethan was quieter, his smiles less frequent. I caught him staring out the window late at night, his thoughts somewhere I couldn't reach. One evening, as we sat on the fire escape, I broke the silence. "Are you regretting this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned to me, his eyes soft but resolute. "Never," he said. "But it's harder than I thought. Not you, not us. The world." I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to. We'd found freedom, but it came at a cost. Friends from home had stopped texting, and the ones who did sent messages laced with judgment. "How could you do this to Claire? What's wrong with you?" Then, one morning, a letter arrived. It was from Claire, her handwriting neat but shaky. Ethan and I sat at the kitchen table, the paper between us like a bomb. "Ethan, Caleb," it began. I got your letter. I don't know what to say, except that I'm hurt. But I'm trying to understand. I loved you, Ethan. But I see now you were never mine to love. I hope you find what you're looking for. But please, don't come back to Willow Creek. It's not safe for you here. The last line hit like a punch. Not safe. We'd known the town wouldn't accept us. But seeing it in Claire's words made it real. We can't go back, Ethan said, his voice hollow. No. I agreed, my throat tight. We can't. That night, we held each other closer. The city's lights a distant comfort. We were building something new, something ours. But the shadows of our past were never far behind. Months passed, and New York became home in a way I hadn't expected. The city's chaos was a shield, letting us blend into the crowds. Just two guys in a sea of millions. Ethan's bruise faded, and he started smiling again, his laugh echoing through our tiny apartment when I burned dinner or tripped over the rug. But the past lingered, a quiet ache we couldn't outrun. We built a life small, imperfect, but ours. Ethan got promoted at the construction site, his confidence growing with every project. I moved from the coffee shop to a bookstore, surrounded by stories that felt safer than our own. We made friends, cautious at first, but soon we had a small circle of people who didn't ask about our last name or why we'd left Virginia. One night, at a bar in the village, we met Sam, a photographer with a quick smile and a story of his own. He'd left a small town too, chased out by a family who couldn't accept him. You're brave, he told us over beers, his eyes flicking between us. Not everyone has the guts to choose love over everything else. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table, and I felt a warmth I hadn't in months. Sam's words stayed with me, a reminder that we weren't alone, that others had walked this path and survived. But survival wasn't the same as peace. Mom called every few weeks, her voice softer each time, but she never asked us to come home again. Dad didn't call at all. I missed them, missed the smell of Mom's cooking, the sound of Dad's old truck rumbling into the driveway. But I couldn't go back. Not when Ethan and I had finally found a place where we could breathe. One evening, as winter settled over the city, Ethan came home with a small box in his hand. What's this? I asked, my heart racing as he set it on the table. Open it, he said, his eyes bright with something I couldn't name. Inside was a pair of rings. Simple silver bands engraved with a single word, always. Caleb, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I know we can't get married. Not legally. Not like other people. But I want you to know I'm in this forever. You're my home. My family. My everything. Tears stung my eyes as I slipped the ring onto my finger, the weight of it grounding me. Forever, I whispered, pulling him into a kiss that felt like a vow. We wore the rings on chains around our necks, hidden but always there, a secret promise between us. It wasn't a wedding, but it was ours, and that was enough. Then, one spring morning, a knock came at the door. I opened it to find Mom standing there, her coat dusted with snow from an early storm. Her eyes were red, but she smiled. A tentative, fragile thing. I'm sorry, she said before I could speak. I didn't understand before. I was scared, and I let that fear come between us. But you're my sons, and I love you. Both of you. Ethan stepped forward, his hand finding mine. Mom, he said, his voice steady. We're happy here. We've built something real. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I see that now, she said. I want to be part of it. If you'll let me. We invited her in. And for the first time in months, we really talked. She told us about Willow Creek, how the gossip had faded, how Claire had moved to Richmond and was dating again. She told us Dad was struggling but trying, that he missed us but didn't know how to say it. I'll talk to him, Mom said. He'll come around. He loves you both, even if he's too stubborn to show it. As she left, promising to visit again, I felt a weight lift. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. A year after we left Willow Creek, Ethan and I stood on a rooftop in Brooklyn, surrounded by our friend Sam, the photographer, and others we'd met along the way. The city sparkled below, a canvas of lights that felt like it belonged to us. We weren't celebrating a wedding or an anniversary, just a momentum moment where we could be ourselves. Unapologetically. Ethan raised a glass, his ring glinting on its chain. To love, he said, his voice carrying over the chatter. To choosing it, no matter what. Everyone cheered, and I felt my heart swell. This was our life now, not perfect, but ours. We'd faced judgment, fear, and loss, but we'd also found joy, connection, and a love that refused to be silenced. Mom visited more often, each trip a little easier. Dad sent a letter once, short but heartfelt, promising to come see us soon. Claire never wrote back, but we heard through Mom that she was happy, building a new life. One night, as we lay in bed, Ethan traced the ring around my neck. Do you ever regret it? He asked, his voice soft. No, I said, and I meant it. It's been hard, but you're worth it. We're worth it. He smiled, pulling me close. Always, he said, echoing the word on our rings. We didn't know what the future held, more challenges. No doubt. More moments where the world would try to tear us down. But we'd face the worst of it and come out stronger. Ethan and I had chosen each other, not just against the odds, but because of them. Our love wasn't a rebellion. It was a truth, hard-won and fiercely kept. As the city hummed outside, I closed my eyes, feeling Ethan's heartbeat against mine. We weren't just brothers, not just lovers, we were two souls who'd found their way to each other, against a world that tried to keep us apart. And in that truth, we found our home.